David online.
Okay, we have more, so we can begin the meeting. Thank you all that are coming. This is, I'm glad we got such a big room. This is the people we've had in the meeting. And that's a comment to your commitment on the issues. Yeah, so my name is Charles Young. I'm the chair. Before I start roll call, I usually start with a Polelo Royale. So I just selected this one out of the blue, and I think it's relevant today. It's Ohi Olaitami Itapohu. And what it literally translates to is when the forehead lumps, rub it with a board. And the underlying meaning is find a remedy for a problem. So maybe today we'll be looking for remedies as well and suggestions from you all. So before I get started on the business piece, I'd like to first have the council members or committee members introduce themselves. I'll start here.
Hi, I'm the Vice Chair Nancy Cipio. Hello, thank you for coming.
Heather Karate from Kapuza.
I'm John Phillips here. I live in Oklahoma.
Dave. Muted, Dave.
Can you unmute him, Jeff?
David Werter from Kona.
Thank you. I'd also like staff to introduce themselves on Zoom and in person.
Everybody, my name is Mario Paul, planning department staff, and we have here Camilla Kalugi and Jessica Lynn, planning council.
And we have Corporation Council.
Good afternoon, Jean Campbell, Deputy Corporation Counsel.
Thank you all. I think we have one person in today, absent today. So just some housekeeping things. Obviously, cell phones, put them on mute or turn them on. When you testify, please say your name and introduce yourself into it, or when you give testimony. And to those that are on Zoom, please indicate by raising your hand if you wanted to testify. Janice, I think you've got someone property for you, so you're on the list. You don't need to raise your hand. And so all in person, we want you to speak into this device. It's an owl. So,
Yeah.
yes. So please do that. Okay, so as part of just to start off, there are two things I want to do first. I think is we have a lot of people testifying on item number 2, which I think also probably a lot of testimony anyway. But I did want to remind folks that the action committee, as the action committee, we're not decision makers. So that's very important. So the testimony, please focus it on the subject matter if you can, and then also our interest really at the core of our why we're here is to try to understand whether the issue is consistent with the Kona CDP, whether it's consistent with the Kona Community Development Plan. So that's kind of the areas where we're going to be taking the attention of. And then we also have a number of people testifying, and again, I think this is probably the most time. So generally, I let people talk all the way through, but I'd like to at least have maybe a 1 to 3 minute time, so you can focus and we can hear everything that everybody has to say, and we'll discuss that testimony, after you do that testimony when we get to the subject matter. Generally, we also ask folks if they want to testify first, and then when we get into the subject matter, they can testify again. But I think it's fine to just try and do it all at that point. Okay, so for the council members, 2 things I'd like to maybe get approval for. The first is to move item 2 up to item 1, since we have so many people there, it's probably a while, but we get through everything. So first, can we get a move to,
I'll make the motion,
I'll make the agenda.
item 2 to the top and, put item 1 below item 2.
I'll second the motion.
and no other changes other than that in terms of, agenda. Okay, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
It's, opposed, nay. Okay, hearing none, we'll be moving item 2 up to item 1 on the agenda. Second, what I'd like to do is to, see if I can get a motion to defer the minutes to the end of the, to the end of the agenda, so that we have, again, full opportunity to discuss item 1.
I'll motion to defer the minutes to the end of the.
Any discussion on that? If not, all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, hearing none, so we will, defer the minutes to the end of this session. Okay, so I think most people here are veterans that have these kinds of meetings, so I understand that you, I'm gonna take for granted that you understand the conduct. So I'm gonna open business item number 1, which is down number 1, that is a discussion. Let me make sure I get this right. Testimony with the county council regarding Kona 3 LLC rezone application, PLREZ 2022-000033. Discussion and decision making on whether action committee will provide testimony to the county council. So that's specifically what this item is about. I'm gonna start with Nancy. You have something that
I
you,
thought you were going to.
no, I want you to read that.
Oh, okay, you want me to read my, okay.
Yeah.
Since I was responsible for asking to put this item on the agenda, I wrote sort of my own testimony. So it's more practical for me to read something than to try to add lib, otherwise it'll take twice as long. So I'm sorry, I have to be so, structured, but anyway. This is my opinion. The Kona CDP Action Committee members are the ambassadors for the Kona Community Development Plan. Under the Hawaii County Code, Chapter 16, part of the Action Committee's duties and responsibilities are to, quote, provide ongoing guidance and advocacy to advance implementation of CDP goals, objectives, policies, and actions. So that's the county code description of what our responsibilities are. Over the last year, the Action Committee has been going through the implementation section of the Kona CDP, looking at goals, objectives, policies, and actions. We have been looking at different implementation items that we can put energy into. In years past, the group of members jumped on the Kona CDP goal to form a Kona Open Space Network, and that actually got funded by the planning department. So the energy that the committee put into that implementation, it was off and running. It's wonderful. In the past years, members have been looking at other things, like more recently, the development of the Kalakaua Regional Park. And also last month, we came up with several other implementation items that people are interested in pursuing. But beyond that, although we are strictly an advisory committee, there may be occasions when a project or development is proposed that we may want to discuss and offer recommendations as to whether it not is consistent with Kona CDP goals, objectives, policies, and actions. So that's why I put this particular project on the agenda. I asked that the Kona 3 LLC request be placed on our agenda to, quote, provide ongoing guidance and advance implementation of the CDP goals, unquote. This project was originally proposed 40 years ago. And they are seeking, I think, it's a 10-year extension to start the project. Development in Kona and corresponding infrastructure deficiencies have increased drastically since 1984. I think everybody can see that. In 2008, the Kona CDP adopted the transportation concurrency objective to, quote, manage the timing of growth as to avoid overloading the arterial system, unquote. The Kona urban area has been identified as a critical road area. That was in 2008 when the Kona CDP was adopted. So even then, the urban area is considered a critical road area. Meaning our roadway infrastructure improvements haven't kept up with development. And anyone who drives around Kona can see that the traffic gridlock on Highway 11 has gotten much worse, even since 2008. And it hasn't kept up with development. So, therefore, my purpose today is to state on the record that in my opinion, the Kona 3 LLC request failed to address the Kona CDP transportation concurrency objective. And that's if you look at the Kona CDP, it's a substantial discussion about transportation concurrency because it was a big deal that got a lot of people interested in the Kona CDP in the first place because traffic was getting worse and worse and worse, and we weren't building the infrastructure to support it. And that was before 2008. That was kind of one of the things that kicked off the whole interest in the Kona CDP. So if this, and really nothing substantial in that area in terms of improving the infrastructure has occurred since then. So if this project goes forward in advance of substantial improvements for our regional roadway infrastructure, the traffic gridlock on Highway 11 will worsen, further compromising the safety and quality of life for Kona residents in exchange for very little benefit. So that's my statement. Thank you for bearing with me.
And thank you for requesting it to be on the agenda. So I'll start with public comment. Janet, ma'am,
Okay, thank you.
can you introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi all. My name is Janet Matlock and I am a resident of California. Aloha kakao. Great to see everybody. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today on the Kona 3 LLC application. As you just heard, they're asking for another 10-year extension for a project that was originally approved in 1984. By way of perspective, in 1984, I was in my 20s. I am now a grandmother. This project was conceived decades ago, prior to the development of the Kona Community Development Plan. And in many ways, it's a poster child for the reasons that KDCB was and still is so needed. For the applicant, the original project was for a 500-unit, single multiple family residential development. Then, quote, over the course of 23 years or so, the original applicant, Camrex Inc., proceeded with the initial increment into 215 single-family units in useful districts. Extensions were requested and granted, and the first subdivision was essentially completed in 2007. The most recent extension was granted in November 2007, with work to be completed by 2011. Nothing ever happened. In 2015, knowing this ordinance and zoning were expired, Kona 3 LLC and its sister LLCs, owned by the same individuals, purchased this land for $600,000. They claim this project was for workforce and affordable housing. This is not and has never been true. The original 1984 application included a separate parcel in the PI of this project to be given to the county to satisfy affordable housing requirements. The current applicant purchased the same land for less than $1,000 and again tried to give it to the county for affordable housing credit. When this was turned down, they put it on the market for $750,000. To my knowledge, we did not sell. Kona 3 LLC has attempted to evade the building of the 10% affordable housing credit loan from the build out of Vistas. They tried to use purchased housing credits for the current request, including testifying in 2023 before the Land Use Commission that they were using affordable housing credits from the approved 100-unit project above Lowe's. The affordable housing builder for this project testified before the council this year that these projects were not and had not been linked. Kona 3 LLC claims this project would not be used for SDBRs. Yet their request includes reference to the zoning code where SDBRs would be allowed in the for sale portion of these units, provided the units are organized in a condominium property regime. They could include language that prohibits this, but they don't. In their current application, Kona 3 LLC states, quote, "The Kona Community Development Plan became effective on September 10th, 2008, and was not considered during the course of the review of this rezoning action due to the filing of the request in 1994. Yet, they go on to cite the Kona Community Development Plan where it suits them and ignore it where it does not. They note that the CDP calls for active recreation opportunities. Then they state that residents can recreate at the Old Kona Airport and the adjacent fields and pool, at the community park on Pool Line subdivision, and at the usual county beach parks along the drive. They have no intention of providing anything on site other than 2 swimming pools with their own, quote, parks and community center, each separate for the exclusive use of each section. In other words, one over here for the homeowners and potential STDRs, and one over there for the renters. No public access. They state that the properties are in the Kona urban zone, but not within the confines of the TOD, and they claim they aren't in the concurrence zone. In fact, they want to revive a stale rezone from 1984 and extend it another 10 years, but not comply with the intent of the Kona Community Development Plan. They don't want to include bike paths or connectivity or open spaces. They do want another cul-de-sac development. Most recently, Kona 3 asked to skip their hearing with the Leeward Planning Commission following the Cultural Resources Commission recommendation that this land should be preserved in perpetuity. Kona 3 claimed that there was a 90-day delay due to canceled meetings, but in fact, in this case, there was only 1 meeting canceled after they requested, because they requested not to be on the agenda for months. They gamed the system. It goes on. As Maya Angelou famously quoted, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." So mahalo nui for listening to this, for considering this, and hopefully for giving the county council a please send it back to zero. This is not within the confines and what the intent is for the community. Okay. Mahalo so much for your service and for your volunteer.
Thank you, Dad. Any questions? Dave, any questions? Okay, we'll move on. Again, we try to keep it 3 minutes. I'm not gonna put my timer on. Sure, okay, David, sorry, let me do the last. Is it yeah.
That's my right. In the interest of marital harmony, can my wife go first?
I know that. Of course.
We've been married almost 39 years, so there's no home any left. My name is Diane Blanchett Maddox. David and I live in Kona near the proposed development. Please recommend to oppose Bill 169 granting another time extension on this site. This project was first approved over 40 years ago, 1984. Under the current zoning, all units around 400 less affordable housing units of approximately 50 or 60 will be able to be used for short-term rental units in the areas surrounded by residential neighborhoods. Short-term rental units should not be permitted to be added to our neighborhood. Several Hawaii County commissions and programs sanctioned for protecting and preserving Aina on this island have recommended preserving this land, including the County Cultural Resource Commission in 2023, the POMC in 2022 added it to its list to be purchased by the county for open space, as well as the state Na'ala trail system in 2022. Please, this Aina should be preserved for culture and historical Aina as open space. And I also wanted to thank you, each of you, for agreeing to serve on this important committee. Every time David and I travel to Hilo to testify or attend a community meeting, we realize that there are so many of us trying to preserve and protect our Aina. For me, it's been a learning experience. with so many knowledgeable people helping share their knowledge. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any question? Yeah. Thank you. Hey, David, it's your turn.
Aloha, how are you guys today? David Lance and Matt, here we have living in Kona and we own a house here. The Royals Vista Kona 3-time extension date is legitimate and serious issue with zoning concurrency. Development of this site is premature and presents serious risks to health, safety, and welfare of our community and its cultural and historical resources. The 68 acres remains undeveloped after 40 years, but poses incredible threats to insufficient public infrastructure and cultural preservation as an application of a scale zoning and banking practice is no longer appropriate and aberration of current public uses. The site was zoned in 1984 at a time when Kona was virtually undeveloped and hungry for development. Development has since escalated dramatically. There's ample testimony evidence in the public record of infrastructure demands and community concerns that drastically or adversely change. Under the current standards, this development poses a serious risk to health, safety, and welfare. First, the rapid subsequent development mock-up of the site will overwhelm the extensive floodplain resulting in dangerous flood conditions. There's a map we have, if you want to see it, it's in the middle of 2 floodplains. No measures to mitigate this overwhelming flood, and the plan is under anywhere in the foreseeable future, and flooding the contested being in danger. Second, the development of this site threatens destruction of important historical and cultural resources on the site and cumulatively within the community. Historical and cultural resources have been overrun by development since 1984. Community inventories of sacred sites, historical trails, open spaces, and the scenic viewpoints are rapidly disappearing to development referring to cultural genocide. This is newly presented evidence of 2 trails that should be recognized as property of the Hawaiian people of the state that warrant protection under the law. You find that in the records that was gone before council and various committees. There's newly presented evidence of 2 trails. Okay, newly presented evidence is identified endangered species on the site. Owls, bats, it's a natural habitat. Another one of the objectives of preservation that I believe this plan is all about. When they presented evidence, these developers claim there's no substantial impact in natural, historical, and cultural resources. It's extensive. I mean, we didn't have to even listen to the testimony and understand I couldn't do it here today. Development on this site is premature and contrary to community interests and irreversible. Third, development since 1984 has resulted in already critical overburdening of community transportation system. This development threatens imminent collapse of the already overburdened capacity of community transportation system, the primary highway artery, linking community with its neighboring communities and commuter workforces. There's ample evidence in the public record of this as well. One testifier called in big shots of impossible traffic in each direction. No one asked that trust me, they will roll the other. No improvements or funding has been dedicated to relief of this critical infrastructure. Nothing's foreseen in the immediate future. Development of this site at the time perpetrates several hundred short-term rentals at a time when the state and county are struggling to control or eliminate this very real threat to local affordable and workforce housing. This type of land banking and sale at market value invariably. These type of units will sell well above any other market value there is. It won't even sell above the expensive house would sell for. Fifth, the property has been recognized and identified by the county as property worthy of acquisition by the county for preservation of public open space and natural resources. There's a viable alternative to this development, and it even is reimbursable to the current developer. And I got to point out, we're losing our open space. We're losing our protection of the natural sacred sites and other historical sites. This is an opportunity for the kind of open space that cities have planned for years. I probably would refer you to planning in places like Joshua Tree or even New York City, where they built their own park. The preservation of this is invaluable. The property, I guess I can conclude for this committee is aware of how complicated this issue is and how far behind the times this development is and this selling is. The concurrency warrants denial of the time extension. The development will proceed only on the way to the expiring zoning decision policies and only at the cost of the public and community. Thank you for your time.
Hold this up for a second.
Oh, one before I stop. This is the map. Here, as you see, are the borders of the property.
This is the property, right? This little triangle here, and right, and this is the highway. The property is right through the middle of these.
That little green triangle is the only thing that's not in the floodplain or the flood.
This is a state map.
Thank you. Any Dave, you with us?
He's very informed.
Moving on, just apologies from our side, I should have introduced council member of the AES in the beginning. Well, you're taking one of your values.
Thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, so, you signed up as well, so you, yeah. So,
Okay. Hello, my name is Rebecca Villegas. I have the honor, the privilege, and the heavy responsibility of representing District 7 on the Hawaii County Council. I sit here today in alignment with the constituents of District 7 and those that have worked in county planning for decades. In 1984, I was 11. And I lived up in Kalawa at the time. But when I was 14, my mom and dad got divorced and we moved over off of Kalani Sunset. So I watched the vistas be built and Rocco come in and all that happened as I was going through high school and college. This project is out of date and out of touch. This is the fourth phase of what was, intended to be the vistas. The project was approved way before the CDP Action Committee even existed. So to claim that it's in alignment is a false statement. Unfortunately, in my experience with this project, I have seen a lot of false statements, and it's very concerning to me. We are at a time in history when it is imperative that people in positions of leadership and opportunity to make decisions that affect 7 generations going forward. I'm 5th generation, I'm behind a Holly, born in the old Hilo Hospital, Kona grad. My mom's a Kona grad. My 2 daughters born and raised here, still here, working in sustainability and the medical profession. My grandson here. So I'm committed to this place. This is my home. And while I'm so grateful for the testimony of those who have spoken before, they have the exact details and statistics. I tend to speak more from the heart. When I look at this project, the flood corridors are reason enough not to provide this extended zone. The ARC sites, the Holua sled. We had the world's foremost expert on Holua slides fly in on his own accord to talk about the slide that is historically documented to exist there and connects it to everything that happened in Makai. This man was not paid to testify as the developer's cultural expert was. The ancient trails, as has been mentioned before, and this is something I look forward to having them there to testify at council. They have identified there are ancient trails there, and there are legal requirements for ancient and historical sites for buffers. We are in dire need of open space connectivity in Kona. Dire need. There was some deception about the affordable housing credits that could be used from the AHE Group's affordable housing project that's going behind loads. And thankfully, McConaughey was really excellent and forthright at putting that to an end. It was not put to an end by the developer until they were called on it and forced to tell the truth. The land that they claim was given to the county to build affordable housing originally is in a massive flood corridor. You cannot build housing there. They bought it for $1.
100,000. There were 2 sales, I'm not sure which.
Yeah, so they bought it for pennies on the dollar and they're trying to sell it for 750 times that. That doesn't reflect greed and land banking and prospecting. I don't know what would. It's a flood corridor. Already the gentleman that lives in Makai, that property almost gets flooded out by what comes through that area. According to the CDP, infrastructure must be concurrent with projects like this. We do not have concurrent infrastructure. The traffic, the roads cannot endure. We are at capacity, if not far exceeded it. There are safety issues for evacuation routes from OBE Drive. All of our council members attended a national emergency response training. And we talked a lot about and learned a lot about places and municipalities that were devastated by natural disasters and other emergencies, and without adequate evacuation routes, we are setting ourselves up for disaster. And I do not want that on my conscience. We are currently under a consent decree for our wastewater treatment facility with the Environmental Protection Agency. It's currently in a lawsuit with Justice. Concept of adding another 450 units. I wonder of the legality of it. To continue to approve something like this to add to a wastewater treatment facility that's currently under lawsuit. Seems wise. People say sometimes, well, is it illegal? And my question then becomes, is it ethical? And is it advisable? Because it shouldn't just have to be the law that people abide by, because we know the law is created by humans and it's pliable, and lawyers get paid a lot of money to find loopholes in the law. But when you look at value systems and ethical treatment of our land and our resources, I think we can find a basis and a grounding to return, especially to the wisdom of this culture. This legislation has received a negative recommendation by the CRC, a negative recommendation by the Leeward Planning Commission, and a negative recommendation to pass out of the Legislative Approvals and Acquisitions Committee at Council last week. There is a process, there is a reason for things to have to go through this, and it is going through it, and it continues to get no. So I am here to ask for your support and utilizing your voice. I appreciate. We're jealous. You guys aren't decision makers, that's what I said. But you do have huge voice and opportunity to support us by providing a letter from the CDP Action Committee in opposition for this 10-year time extension. And that's what I am going to ask for your support with. For having me. And
Thanks. Any questions from?
Yeah, I have one. You said you were, in the area where one of this went up. Do you? How does, I guess, that project compare with this one? With that one was being proposed today, would there also be these issues with it? It looks like maybe outside the flood zones, maybe that's different, but I'm just curious about how that compares.
Being born and raised here and having worked with my mentors, Angel Palago, Karen Diop, and Miley David on the Kona team, there was a time when everything was for sale. And it's only been in the Hawaiian language was just experiencing, thankfully, a resurgence and finally giving credible valuation and validation for the pricelessness of these cultural sites. And it was through the Kohaniki decision that they went to the Supreme Court and won, in the Pash decision, which established Native Hawaiian gathering rights. So established surfing as a cultural practice, moved on to the Kaukulegu decision, which creates a requirement for a cultural impact statement. So back in this time, that wasn't even, everything was for sale, and the people didn't have the voice they have now.
And there weren't many requirements.
There weren't many requirements. If you look at history, whoever makes the rules makes the money. And at the time, historically, Kona was for sale. And there were a lot of large tracts of land that were sold. And we do know from the reports that were actually brought by some of the developers, consultants, and from the cultural practitioner, Tom Pahaku Stone, that there were actually even more substantial cultural sites where locals is. But they're gone forever now. My grandson is Native Hawaiian, and I want him to be able to walk the trails and in the paths of his ancestors on the earth that is still there. And we know that they were not paddle paths. Because, and as the trails experts will, you could ask them, I talked to them extensively, the way that the rock walls were put together or built and built up in between them, you don't do that for paddle trails. You do that for Hula. So the evidence is all there. And it's priceless, and at a time, as was said earlier, where other municipalities are recognizing the incredible value in these historical and cultural spaces and open spaces, and turning it into a blessing. We have an opportunity, for this property to get purchased through the open space. I'm actually working on a resolution right now. They bought it for $600,000. That's pennies on the dollar once again. So we have an opportunity to save this piece of land, keep it in perpetuity for future generations, also protect. We've got water, we've got a lot of issues, and talking to the director of DPW, even he is like, this is unwise, this is irresponsible, and not compatible with the Kona of today.
I had, just, you mentioned the letter, the AC may consider that, and at some point, but. And lots of timetable, time frame for that, not having that letter submitted and. That's the submitted to.
I would say that it would be, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nancy, but it would be to the chair in the clerk's office, goes to Heather Kimball and John, who's our county clerk. And this is scheduled to be heard at council on July 10th.
Find out, deadline
For testimony.
especially if we get something written from the chair.
Yeah, and if you put that testimony in and it comes in on Tuesday morning, I will print it and walk it to the chair and the clerk, and we will submit it as legal testimony, so.
They plan on hearing it in Hilo. They're not willing to present the attorney.
Well, typically, right, you meet every other time in different locations, so we heard it in committee here. So then it passed out of committee with a negative recommendation, gets heard in council, and the next meeting is in Hilo. If we're unable to vote it down in Hilo, then it will have to come to second reading in council, which will be.
But the people are able to testify in person here on the 10th.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you so much for your insight. I have just a comment. It's been heard, I've heard two members already say that, there are cultural properties there. And I'm assuming CRC, you said these are negative to that. Okay, based on the input from both as well, or archaeology as well.
Yep, all of it.
And our region.
I can contribute to your question about the cultural determination. The cultural made a recommendation that it be, that the land be maintained in perpetuity for the protection of it. This is how important it was. And they actually visited, we were through all the terms with them. They went for a site visit, they visited the land personally, they took extensive testimony from experts from the state and federal representatives in this area, and also from Tom, publicly Stone, as well as some other movie practitioners.
I had heard the negative recommendation. I was just wondering, you know, that.
It was an actual recommendation to preserve.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the insights. If there's no other questions, I'm gonna ask, Mike. What's the comment?
My name is Michael Kawa. I live in Captain City. And I've been here for like 40 years, practicing. And I speak in two capacities. One is a general member of the public, because I served on the steering committee that worked on this with Nancy and staff. And then also I serve as legal counsel to the applicant on one of three elements. First, as a member of the public and member of the steering committee, when the CDP was put together, and there was a lot of issues about what would happen in terms of implementation. How do we know this will happen? So we have a matrix that we're supposed to kind of use as a document to guide us as to where are we in the process. In the back end. And it's a punch list just so that everyone knows for sure where we are. And my concern has always been on the area of transportation, that the thrust when you read the plan is that county government since 2008 was to take steps to acquire land for road replacement. So the plan lays out the potential new future roads to help alleviate traffic. And of course, no landowner is going to voluntarily say, "Oh, you can use my land." And so that means the county has to use its condemnation power. I know when Hiram was on this committee at one time, Hiram Rivera. I remember we sat down and had a long discussion. I even wrote a paper for him. And we talked about what happened in Spokane, Washington, where they had the same data. So they came up with something like a public improvement district plan to create the necessary road infrastructure. And so complained, but eventually to public bonding, financing, impact fees. It happened, it took like 8 years. But this county has not done anything. And so therefore, it's only natural for people to say, "Oh, the traffic. And so we need to really focus on where the cause is. The cause is, people are gonna keep coming here, they're gonna get in cars, then we need to have the county work on infrastructure plan. You can just complain. Everyone can complain, but you gotta do something. So the action committee, pursuant to its charter, is charged with providing guidance and advocacy to advance the CDP's implementation. But if you do anything on the subject of infrastructure, that's what.
Mike, we can't hear you. You speak up for that.
Oh, that's what they should be doing. Secondly, as an attorney for the applicant, Kona LLC, I think you're gonna hear one side, you have to do it the other side. So I don't know if they would ever invite it. I only learned about it online. That you need to hear the other side of the stories before as a member of a public committee, you write a letter to anyone, even if it falls within the role as advocate for the CDP. What I'm hearing is testimony as if you were decision makers on up or down. If I were in their shoes, I would only present you facts, not opinions, but facts. And you should ask us anyone for that. And I'll properly.
Now they comment that it seems like they're going through an approval process with their obligations by facts.
Yeah. And so
It's not us for us to reduce or reduce them and just giving us facts. They're coming to public meetings and they should do everything they can to represent the facts.
the point is, I don't know when this notice came out.
Well, they've already been planning.
Yeah, I know.
And they skirted the,
Well,
like, Labor Planning Commission.
I know. No, what I'm saying is, if you're gonna get, you can talk to your attorney later on, but if you're gonna start taking position as advocacy to implement the plan, make sure the plan is made whole or made effective.
The Deputy Planning Director has already submitted his conclusion that the plan is being complied with. So, as a public matter, advocacy, the action committee has been asked to come up with a statement contract. That's your business, that's not mine. That's your internal mechanism. But before you write something, I think you need to know what the other side of the story is. And I could sit here all day, we could go back and forth. It's a matter of protocol.
So just as an FYI, someone came to the action committee to do a presentation, but because it was not on the agenda, I couldn't accept, the discussion on that. But I did say that we would hold the meeting, probably to air it all out at that time. As it turned out, the timetable didn't allow us to do that because we're at this point, so just to just to advise people that this was actually brought up before it should be finished, but not, so we could not have a discussion. Yes, sir.
My understanding was they could have come to the meeting and provided testimony.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they knew about it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say two things. One, I found out about it the same way you did. It was on the agenda. And I'm on the list to get copies of county things. The other thing is what I read in my opinions, their research and I think that's enough.
I'm an attorney, so I'm just gonna address the legal issue, because I didn't know it was on the agenda. Number one, he represents the developer, and as such, his knowledge is imputed to his employer. So what he knows, he knew about that meeting, they knew about this meeting, so you don't have to worry about that. Secondly, he can't give you legal advice as how you should proceed. You do have legal counsel, I think they're on screen. And you guys, I'm sure we'll take that up with you. But I always am concerned when attorneys come to meetings and they start to throw this legal jargon around. Really, what we're here to do is to try to get to the truth of matters, and you guys can make decisions, and that's what we support in the community. So I'm gonna, as an attorney, I'm gonna feel the element. It's imputed to his client. If he knows, they knew, they could have been here. So that's a legal matter. I'll tell you.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think the committee will get together and discuss it. Because of the short timeline, it's important to us as well. That should we decide, and we haven't decided yet, whether we're going to send a letter or not, what the contents of the letter are. And help hearing from all sides is helpful to us.
I don't intend to argue with the wrong point.
Yeah, well, I understand. Okay. So,
Charlie, should we ask for Janice's input and can we make a motion to compose a letter and then we can decide what?
Chair, I'm on the list to.
okay, all
right, just double check.
It's important.
Thank you so much.
It's important to us to, yeah, so, I don't know, Mike, let me just ask this then. It seems like there's been a negative recommendation every place they submitted the proposal. I think they have a full understanding, as a representative, they have a full understanding of why these negative recommendations are there.
One is
Whether it's community plan related or not. Yeah, okay. Right.
Mr. Matsukawa mentioned Deputy Director Jeff Darrow's signing off on this. The challenge I have and my constituents have is that the reason that Jeff Darrow is presiding over this is because Sendo Kern has a conflict of interest because this developer was his client. Once again, maybe not illegal, but highly ill-advised. Once again, calls into question community's trust for government. And if that's the one department and one grouping of people that gave a positive recommendation, but the rest who are made up of authentically people who serve in this area is consistently asking for a no, it's really hard for people to swallow that and take that as a viable excuse, for lack of a better word, for why they should just trust and lay down. It's like,
Is there depending upon regarding?
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't my understanding that the planning department's position was that it was consistent with the 2005 general plan, wasn't that their position?
yeah, so even weaker because we're at a 2005.
Yeah, the 2000, they didn't say they've gone through the Kona CDP to see if it's consistent deal, that's what I thought, that's what prompted me.
Thank you for correcting me.
Because it seems to me that any new project needs to go through the Kona CDP and told them to
Exactly.
say, hey, it's consistent with this or it's not consistent with this, and it's definitely up to the planning department to do that. And they
Exactly.
didn't.
Thank you.
And then before we get to any motions, I want to get you the.
Yeah,
the-
for sure.
Okay, so, Candace is on my, yeah, Elizabeth,
Yes.
yeah.
Hello. All right. Hello, my name is Elizabeth Dunn. I live in Kona, Kona. And thank you, Rebecca. That's a nice little segue. So I've attended the committee meetings on this proposal. I'll be continuing at the council meetings. I bring a set of skills that are a little bit different than most. And I'm trying to keep this quiet. A number of people know this. And I only say this because it's a skill set. It's not a title or what. I'm originally from Northern California. I was a planning director and a planning manager in various cities. I have a 30-year career in planning. I have a BA in environmental studies from UC Santa Cruz, go bananas looks, and a master's in city and regional planning from Rutgers University. So I look at this projects in two lenses, as a residential property owner and a planner. And it's really hard for me to look at a plan like this that is 40 years old or conceptually 40 years old. You've heard the impacts that will be created by this project. It's 450 units, sorry. It's going to be about 900 traffic trips twice a day through a spine road with this proposal. And I'm not quite sure on logistics and where this ends up. But I think it's kind of near the first turnoff to get into Kailua from north of Waco. And it kind of reads like every other right in, right out intersection. This is going to be, if I may say the technical term, a foobar. I can only imagine the traffic incidents and accidents that happen. So I find the site plan difficult. And I think it is difficult because it's coming through an existing subdivision and leads to vacant land, which could be developed, which then leads into Fulani Estates. I completely understand trying to have good traffic conditions, but this is not the way to achieve it. So that to me is a problem. Flooding is an issue. You've heard that from other folks. We heard last week at the committee meeting that the traffic report for this project was done in 2019. It went to the Planning Commission in 2022. So you've got some off years with COVID, but I would have expected a more recent traffic study. To me, that's a problem. I was also looking at the staff report again, and there's language in the conditions of approval about development impact fees. Based on 450 units, it's roughly $4.5 million in impact fees that goes to the county. That sounds great and lovely and wonderful. But as I'm reading the conditions, all of the money that is put into the traffic component of their proposal, that comes off the top of development impact fees. So they're putting in the feature that they need. But it reduces the development impact fees to the county. That seems sort of problematic for 450 units. You've already heard about the negative recommendations all the way up and down the line. I think the last kind of thing I want to focus on is this is a 10% county affordable housing requirement. That's 45 units. That's 45 units. That's good, but it's nowhere close of what it could be. I could see a higher affordable unit requirements for lots of reasons. If you've got low and moderate income housing, there's an income band that's not being fulfilled with this proposal.
There's a condition of approval for an affordable housing plan, but that's after the fact. It's after the project can get approved. I have a real problem with that. I think that kind of information should be known by the council and the community ahead of time. And there's no specifics. I don't know who's being served. I don't know who's operating the rental housing. I don't know if there's subsidies. I don't know if the first time home buyer program. I mean, the kind of projects I worked in the San Francisco Bay Area were really very specific. You had lots of funding, lots of grants, you know, they were multi-years, multi-funding applications to get affordable housing, you know, constructed. This seems like, what's the phrase? A wing and a prayer, you know, it's a lot of hope, it's a lot of faith. I question if it can get built. I double checked the information about the realtor. He, I think, has built one project in Oahu many years ago. Councilperson Villegas has asked a couple of times where the financing is coming from this. Not a really conclusive answer. I know that's not your purview. I'm just saying, there's a lot of unknowns about this project, and I think a lot of unknowns that should be better understood by the decision makers, by the community. Queen K is already a problem, you know, it's a couple of questions that my husband and I go through every day. What's for dinner? Where are the cats? Which way are we going? Are we going to Lee or are we going up to Queen K? You look at the screen on the car. I feel like I live in the Jetsons world, and then you make your decision. This is only going to get worse. Traffic is only going to get worse. So I believe there are a lot of facts about this proposal that do not meet current county plans. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? So we have 2 more members signed up, Kayla, and then I'll go to you, Janet. Janet's online.
Be very brief. If the action committee does choose to send a letter of comment, presumably negative, I would encourage the committee to focus on a limited range of areas, such as the principal reasons that involved identified concurrency and floodplain development, but particularly the current understanding and thinking of floodplain protection and open space, etc. But the only other point I would like to make is if you do send a letter to recommend negative action, that it not simply be to file this application to deny the extension, but to refer to how the planning, the council or the planning director introduce an ordinance to revert the zoning to its original or more appropriate designation. I say that because in virtually every rezoning bill, from at least my personal experience, it includes a standard wording. One of the very last conditions about time extensions and all this kind of stuff is if they don't meet that time limit, the director may initiate rezoning to the original or more appropriate. Of course, this is the council ordinance, so the council could simply do it themselves as well. So I encourage you not simply to ask for a negative or to deny the extension, but to take the next step and to change the zoning designations to open or some other appropriate. That open is its zoning classification for those who don't know. It doesn't have like per acre how many housing units. There's no housing units. So to suggest reverting it to open or some other appropriate zoning designation for the region. I think that last point is extremely important to drive home this. This is not about denying an extension as much as it is to reframe the role of this land in our community and how to do it and who will do it. Thank you.
Any comments? Yeah. If not, I have only 1 more signed up. Janice, are you?
Aloha, everybody. Hi, thanks, Charlie. I understand the AC's Kuleana, and my testimony is just to encourage you guys to say whatever you can. So I get that. And I'm gonna repeat probably some of the things that were said, but hopefully it will help. The project deserves a letter and the ire of the action committee for blatantly flaunting its defiance of one of the main principles of the KCDP, which is concurrency. The intention of concurrency as enshrined in this ordinance is to ensure that sufficient infrastructure is in place before new development in an area is approved or starts, or at a minimum, the roads, water, wastewater treatment, schools, hospitals, etc., are planned, funded, and moving forward before new development is allowed. And the infrastructure isn't meant to be planned and developed by the provided by the developer. No. The planning and creation of infrastructure that serves not only a single project, but an entire area serving that project and others is meant to be by the county, not developers. The reason is to prevent developer-driven growth that's been haphazard and the bane of our island for decades, if not generations. And the reason we're all sitting in traffic jams and watching as our nearshore waters and aquifer are being increasingly poisoned. Meanwhile, there are no plans that I have heard of, no less funding for changing any or all of that. The second reason this time extension deserves a letter of condemnation, and please mark my words, and this has been said by someone else, a couple of people, is that there's a promise, but no guarantee of affordable housing coming from this project. The sad fact that it's been proven over and over again by developers that use endless excuses that allow them to build their big profit generating housing first and then oopsie, never get around to the affordable part. The prior phase of Kona Vistas is ironically a perfect example of this. And last, though there's more that could be added, and the last testifier just mentioned this, and as did Mr. Matsukala, but I couldn't hear him very well. KCDP requirements can be fulfilled without us bowing down to developers for their promised but rarely manifested crumbs. There are mechanisms for funding roads, affordable housing, and all of the other infrastructure our communities need through mechanisms including and especially impact fees. And I'm sorry I couldn't hear what Michael was saying. I won't get into that more than saying that the Action Committee met extensively with a team of financial consultants long ago. Their expertise was in helping municipalities understand and implement ways to fund infrastructure, including the kind needed to support the implementation of our award-winning plan, Smart Growth Plan. And it was really great to hear the last testifier talking about impact fees as well. We have a lot of expertise here to draw from. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Janice. Any questions for Janice? If not, Sue, you added this. You wanna?
Hi, my name is Sue Aronson. My husband and I own Kona Coast Realty. We've been realtors over 45 years in Kona. 30 plus years ago, living in Honolulu Homestead, Waiono development started happening and flooded started occurring. I started a flood committee with Tomoe Nimori and other people in our subdivision, had meetings at our home, had Harry Kim, who was head of civil defense at our meetings, and brought NRCS, a Kona Water Conservation District, together on a federal, county, and state level to stop allowing grubbing and grading in floodways. Almost all of the Mauka areas are floodways, and you saw that floodplain map. So I have created a institute, Kona Ridge to Reef Institute, to build community resilience with nature-based solutions on a watershed scale, land conservation, wetland restoration and protection, floodplain restoration, greenways, stormwater parks. There's a lot we can do. I also created a watershed project because of my concern of the Keopu floodways. And Richard Vila also owns this 129 acres, TMK 375323, which is in a major floodway, which he just received tentative subdivision approval for a 3-lot subdivision from the planning director, Zendo Kern. I have been approached by Steve Halsey. Rebecca created this meeting for us 2 years ago with concerns of the Keopu floodway. And I just saw Steve Halsey in the parking lot. I said, so I have been sending emails to Zendo Kern asking him to comment on, overturning the 3-lot temporary subdivision, preliminary subdivision.
And, Steve has not heard from Zendo. I have not heard from Zendo over, I think, a May meeting. I've been emailing the mayor. I have not had response from any county official. And I am, really, growing upset with this. So I'd like to give these two pieces of paper to Charlie Young and ask him to submit it to the Kona open space so that I could do presentations to their next meeting. I don't even have a list of when their meetings are. I did not know about the initial meeting in August of 2023. There's one scheduled for August 2024, but I'm gonna be away. So I would like to have some meeting with the Open Space Network before I am gone.
Any questions or comments?
I have a question, actually. And thank you, Sue. I was hoping you would come because of the position. It sounds like part of our meetings. I really appreciate it. The floodplains are addressed in 2020 EIS from the applicant, kind of briefly. I don't know if you've read it or had an opinion about how they addressed it, if it was adequate.
No, I have not, but I will.
They do mention it in the, but it's, yeah, it's.
I have a quick answer to
Yeah.
that. And it was something that was stated in our committee meetings, the first one, which then we postponed to the second one is, it was stated by the developer that the county floodplains are then gonna be the responsibility of the county, because that's the county land. So they're gonna grub and grade and create a flood hazard, and then it's gonna end up being the county's responsibility to mitigate that. I also would note that in the plans, when you look at the plan for the property, you can see these floodways. We all know that our flooding are, the climate's changing, our weather's changing. These flood corridors that didn't flow in this way for 50 years, 10 years are flooding again and at a much, much greater capacity. Also, if you look at their plan, which I have here, they do a really good job of downplaying the floodplain going through there. And
Yeah.
it just looks like a little something there. Don't worry about that. And the other one comes across here, which historically is why we are in the position we're in so many other subdivisions and places that we're allowed to grab and grade. Water goes where water wants to go, and it goes downhill. And I've also heard a number of people talk about this being, constituents are just NIMBYs and they don't want anybody else to get housing because they got theirs and blah, blah, blah. I call baloney on that, but number two, the properties that reside directly Makai of that are our Kama'aina and Maka'ainana properties from the 60s and 70s, where our workforce has lived for generations. And they will be the ones who will be devastated and flooded if this is not taken into consideration and really deep. So pointing out how it's been basically kind of just poo-pooed and shoved under the carpet according to their plan, but when we look at what's real according to the state, this is real and this is valid and this is urgent that we take this into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really, I have to say briefly, piggyback on council members. The volcano eruption from ran from 83 to 2018. Now, as a resident of Canada, I know how the rainfall dropped in this mid-slope area during those years. On average, I documented a fair amount of it by rain gauges. Since it stopped, it's jumped up by over 20 inches a year, sometimes much more than that. Some of these flood maps are based on the period of time after the volcano erupted consistently and produced what causing this rainfall here. The Keapu floodway that wiped out the main subdivision road on the street was in 1982. There was prior floodway, heavy flood action through that street channel in the middle of 81. It's related to the Wow. The 1968 Kamau flow that was to the south of town.
they created that big bridge system, you know, that runs down that sunset, 1968. A lot of major flooding events, long time ago, but during the lifetime of everyone in this room. And some of these flood maps, and I'm not certain about the current FEMA that's on the flood hazard assessment tool, FHAT, that's online, whether that's based on the eruption thing or if it's since it stopped in 2018. I say that to underscore Councilmember Villegas' point about the unknown. You can say unknown, but I'll say it. Unknown limits really of flooding because we're in a different era of our collective lifetimes. And when we have a lot of the observations in the last 4 or 5 years, 6 years, it's been very different. Particularly that reason of no limited volcanic activity is probably one of the reasons that we have maybe not documented sufficiently.
Any other questions about this?
I just wanted to make one comment about reference to the vacation rentals. The reason that came up is because a lot of this project is going to be approved as a multifamily condominium. They aren't saying they're doing vacation rentals, but because of our current county code from about, I think 2016 or so, the county code was adopted to create our search and vacation rental ordinance. But what happened with that ordinance before the final reading is that amendment was made to allow all multifamily, no matter where it is, condominiums to be utilized as vacation. And it's not just in resort nodes or resort districts, but wherever there's a multifamily condominium ownership, automatically, because of Bill 108 getting approved by the county council, they can use it. So all of these houses, unless the developer puts some restriction on it, or the homeowners association or whatever, according to current county law, multifamily residential condominiums have the legal authority to be used as vacation homes.
The only thing that would prevent that, based on my reading of the code, is if the developer or council, made a condition, creates a condition of approval that says you have to create codes, covenants, and restrictions that are assigned to the property that prevent SDVRs. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Why would you create 250, 275 units that are for sale units in a condo complex for property owners? And instead have it be owned by property owners here or elsewhere and rented out for short-term vacation rentals. You're just commodifying the one in another way. You're making more money off of it. And I don't think the point of this. If you're gonna have for sale housing, there has to be a restriction that says CCNRs need to be free.
Well, actually, the search and the vacation rental ordinance needs to be amended to take that off.
Well, I think that's happening again.
Yeah, we're getting on.
I know, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, but
That was.
I understand the importance of the discussion. But
I got a little passionate.
That's a whole nother can.
I am.
Any other?
Chair, you have somebody raising his hand.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't see you.
Joel Gimble.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry I'm late, but as a retired attorney, I'll be brief. And as a professional musician, I hope to achieve some harmony. I'd like to say that I and the other opponents of Bill 169, the Kona 3 LLC application, who attended the meetings of the Legislative Approvals and Acquisitions Committee regarding applauded Councilwoman Villegas. We wholeheartedly agreed with her concerns regarding the absence of necessary infrastructure to support the development, her support of the clear findings and recommendation of the Cultural Resources Commission, and her remarks about the questionable and false assertions that have been made by the applicant. The infrastructure shortcomings include, but are not limited to, the traffic issues, which have been the focus of my concerns and objections through the years. For example, Highway 11 between Henry Street and King Kamehameha Road often looks like a parking lot on weekdays during the AM and PM high traffic hours. The road needs to be widened, and several principal intersections, including Laco Street and the Kuakini Highway access, are particularly troublesome. Unfortunately, no improvements to Highway 11 are planned, much less funded, and the proposed single access point to this development of a full movement channelized intersection for the 900 cars and other vehicles, including school buses, delivery vans, and so forth, for Kona 3 LLC will add immensely to the problem. Furthermore, there are several additional applications for zoning to permit commercial and residential developments on the Mackay side of Highway 11 between Puapuanui Street and Kuakini Highway. Other testifiers have and will continue to voice their concerns regarding the project's damage to cultural resources and other environmental issues that have not been recognized or adequately expressed by the applicant. So although we would have preferred that the committee adopt the recommendation by Councilwoman Villegas to deny the Kona 3 application at the first meeting, it did at its second meeting. Mahalo for your attention. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Can members have any questions?
And I'll just provide this to you. This was provided during the committee meeting. One of my constituents put this together. I believe Janet did. And this shows, we felt it was important to show the other council members who aren't familiar with Kona, what other developments have already been approved and could go shovel ready at any point, and how many homes that includes and how that's going to affect our current infrastructure. So it just gives a broader understanding of what's already in the pipeline and why we need to mitigate the time extension on this property.
Mr. Chair, in my late coming to the meeting, are you folks discussing your letter to the CDP, writing a letter on the subject of Kona 3?
Yeah.
You're still in that conversation?
We're still in that conversation. Are you wanting to provide testimony for that?
Sure.
Okay, I think everybody's gone already, so you can be the last.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah, you should fill that out just for the record.
Well, again, it's my opportunity to see Councilwoman Villegas, and again to thank her for her efforts for this project that is very highly contested. And my testimony is as Lamaku, Kahu of Ahu and Heo. There has been miracles coming to the temple where we have testimony, we have wonderful guidance, and I have volumes of words of light from the ancestors that are to fill the hearts of Oiwi first and then mankind. There's a huge message here, a very strong miracle that this is the place of the birth of the earth. This is the name Kaluo Kalani. It became Hawaii later, but the second heaven is its name. These lands where this development is coming through, they're doing us a favor by bringing attention to it. These lands, and in specifics, 40 miles between Kaloko and Honaunau is what Divine Creator calls for a moratorium of all future building. I have testified with the help of the CDP. I have gone to the first place I went was long range planning, and I gave them this report. To my amazement, I had no response from people. And now along the way, I realized that people don't believe. This is history, and history happening in your backyard. The children will believe. But here's our opportunity to, number one, hear it, hear all of it. And then take it in as a people. We're alive at this time. We are fielding this. We are here. And I'm glad to be among you folks who are listening and who do take it to heart. This is not just asked for, these lands are asked for this care for Creator, for the sacredness of our Mauna Wakea. That definitely means that we are not for any, there cannot be a TMP. Because my testimony will say that this from Almighty God talks about the perimeter of sacredness that echoes and reflects, is in alignment with the temple. Ahu'ena Heiau has Alana Nu'umamau, which is the oracle tower. This tower represents the real tower in life, which is Mauna Wakea. With this news, we cannot build that TMT, nor other ones. And this land here is connected to the care of the earth. It is our responsibility, it becomes our responsibility to be awake on this, aware on this. Our vote is here on this, and God is listening. So I told the members of the council the other morning, I said, whatever you are thinking, you remember that you are beholding to God, and I mean it. I mean it. Whatever is your personal belief, that mighty source is hearing this. If this is in the light of day, this is how this is how source operates, truth, always.
If I could just ask you, we're trying to home in the one project, the 23. So your testimony or comments would help us immensely if we can gather substance to if we decide to put it in the letter.
Thank you. Are you clear on how you stand as a committee?
We haven't voted yet. We haven't decided yet. So.
But you are going to take it up?
The issue with is whether we take it up, whether we write the letter. Yeah. I think there's been a lot of testimony here today that I think we give cause for people to concern, particularly on that, but I can't speak for the rest of the committee. I'm not gonna suggest anything right now until the committee's really had a chance to discuss it, I think.
So Charles, you tell me, up to now, are you saying that the testimony, there's been sufficient to say that there's be a concern to be in favor of this?
I can't speak for the rest of the committee, but from what I've heard, the project has already received negative decision-making throughout the processes. Now, there's certain reasons for those that, the committee's really not, we haven't accessed because it's been so quick. So I think we still need to, at least I need to think about it a little bit more. The question, I guess, is whether we want to submit a letter to the county council. And I think that's the easy decision. The hard decision is going to be what's the substance of the letter. And I think we want to discuss that.
I see. Well, I'll be right to the point to say it was my testimony to the Cultural Commission that you're hearing about. It is that material that caused them to give their recommendation. And how much more sacred can we make it? How much more sacred can we make it? We're talking about the true oracle, Mauna Wakea. It has roots and lands in all districts. And yes, this is a little bit very different from our modern day, isn't it? But I'm sure other people of other times would have said the same thing for their modern day. And I'm going to say that, again, God is asking, and I intend to hold this up to the max. You haven't even begun to see what I'm talking about. Kiola smiles because he knows when it's the temple, I will uphold. It's not even begun yet as far as the reach to all Oiwi on earth is on. Thanks.
Any questions?
Charlie, could I say one quick little thing? You know, this whole project and this whole thing reminds me that back in the day, we used to have developers or people who are making proposals come before the CDP, before that everything was set in motion. And I think that if the CDP Action Committee can ask the planning department to have some of these, you know, highly impacting or potentially highly impacting proposals come before the CDP first, early days, then we can be more, you know, have more input in a positive way rather than responding negatively once it's gotten farther along. And this is a little bit different because it's an extension, but you know, even like the 100-room hotel that was approved for Lee Drive and things like that, that were huge and definitely against the CDP's concepts and, you know, the law were approved, but never came to the action committee. So I'm just suggesting maybe that get agendized sometime so we can be more proactive. And I have to leave the meeting, so thank you, everybody. Thanks again for letting me talk.
David, looking for.
Oh, go ahead, David, you raise your hand? No?
He was waving goodbye.
Hard to tell. All right, are there any other comments? Committee members, any questions for anyone yet?
Just provide the letter from the not having trails experts, and she's bringing copies for you guys.
Yeah, thank you. I guess, you know, the agenda says whether we want to make a decision. It's for the decision making, so I want to do it. Oh, shoot.
Are you opening the question? Is that what you're doing?
To you all, yeah, because the discussion and decision.
When I, originally put this on the agenda, I wasn't necessarily, I didn't ask for the letter, I just asked to talk about it, because I thought it needed to talk about it. So, I don't know how this actually comments that we were gonna decide to write a letter shot on there. But it wasn't. But my own feeling is that it would be great if we decided to, and my own opinion is that the shorter and more, the most direct, the better. It could get really convoluted and saying, we need more information on this, we need more information on that. But as far as I'm concerned, this project is out of date with current planning policy. It is consistent with the Kona CDP, and the application should be denied. So that's my opinion. People don't like to say no, so they like, you know.
I feel the same way, and also think that a concise letter just with a few reasons, which is, I mean, heard over and over the same reasons today.
We're the only body that's the ambassador for the country. The only else, the planning department basically ignores us, so if you're implementing the Kona CDP doesn't come from us, nobody's gonna say it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with everyone. I think even protecting cultural resources is part of the CDP, and I think we're supposed to use the CRC as a source for that, and the fact that they gave the negative recommendations, we should, you know, respect that and should go into our decision making. I think, you know, what Mike brought up with, we should be, it is hard to say no to things like this, right? You know, when my circles, especially, people are kind of a lot more housing insecure, right? And things like traffic are really, I think people would rather sit in traffic than not have a home. Yeah. And so there's a lot of questions about this, whether it's actually going to be affordable housing and stuff. And, but I think we should, and I agree that we need to be following. But I think the other part of that is maybe following up and seeing what's going on with these road extensions, you know, what's going on with this infrastructure, and trying to get some answers on that. And so that if a development comes forward in the future, that, you know, at least that part is, obviously with the cultural resources and stuff, that's.
For this particular project, we don't have the time.
Yeah,
That sort of research.
Yeah.
We could decide whether we're gonna.
lot, basically.
Yeah, and I think there's other problems with it too, the floodways. And that's also,
So issues are infrastructure concurrency, cultural resources, floodplain mitigation, so those are three things that could be.
Well, can I add
Like
one?
commented upon in the letter.
Nancy, I forgot to say, one issue to mainly put right in there is, the nation. Akua has stated that at Kamakohonu, the restoration of the kingdom of Hawaii is at hand. That's why these lands and this discussion is very important, so add that to the list. That's what I bring to the table today. I'm reconfirming that this is a message from Almighty God, that He has named a new leader. And with that in mind, this is all from the history that has happened over the past 10 to 20 years already. I have brought it to light in many circles. People don't believe. This CDP I testified against, you, as you know, because our people don't participate here. Look at the table. You don't see people from here. They need to be here. And guess what? That's why God is saying the restoration period is here and now. Add it to the list. That's one more issue that you need to address. That's here and now, because I brought it up. I haven't said it so clearly, but I do today, because it's at that timing of your expression. So please do. The restoration of the kingdom of Hawaii, starting with Kalua Okalani, the 40 miles. I call it the Kapu Kanaha, Kawoha Kapu Kanaha, the forbidden for new development, 40 acres. Thank you for hearing me.
I just have one quick, I totally, it resonates with me. People are housing insecure. My own children are in their 20s and 30s and housing insecure. But I have to say, from being born and raised here, the equation that's been utilized when building major housing developments for the provision of affordable housing does not actually provide housing for our workforce, the Kama'aina, people that live here, are Maka'ainana, which is our working class. And we end up with more inundation from people that want to move here, and now they see these properties, they're gonna be advertised for mainland buyers, not in a price point that people here can afford from a predominant standpoint. So we end up with the same thing. We end up with the infrastructure challenges and degradation. And we don't end up getting the housing. And it's the same equation we utilize over and over again. Same as when I was young, and they kept saying, build more hotels. And it was like, but jobs, but jobs, but jobs. Okay, but what kind of jobs? And in what kind of opportunity? Something else to take into consideration is these affordable housing components. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's only a 20-year time frame that they have to.
They're not required to stay in perpetuity.
Yeah, so 20 years, this project is already 2 times that, and they're asking for 10 more years, so you were really not solving a problem, and we're really not providing housing to the people. If this was a 100% workforce housing project, sans the flood issues and the cultural issues and the other things which still exist, I would be sitting here saying, we need this. And I know that I would have constituents saying, no, we don't want people to get affordable housing and low income housing confused. But that's not what this is. This is not authentic roots. And there's no legal requirement if they get the time extension for them to ever build this. And once they get the entitlements extended for another 10 years, the value of this property continues to escalate and they can sell it.
think that, yeah, and I think that's a lot of what occurs is the affordable housing. It's low to really question.
90% work for market rate, 90% market rate. They're not denying that. I mean, not the ordinance doesn't deny that, I should say. And we know market rate is that unaffordable for all residents here for the most.
For me, it's job.
Uncle Charlie, we have Jean raising her hand.
Oh, Jean, yeah. Sorry.
Hi, this is Jean Campbell, your Deputy Corporation Counsel. I just wanted to chime in with two brief reminders. One is your meeting time runs out in 10 minutes. And I know this is an important topic, but just to keep everybody on track. And two, to remind you that the scope of what this committee is authorized to do is to send a letter to the council regarding whether or not this project complies with the Kona CDP. And so recognizing that the Cultural Resources Commission is the body that opines about whether there are cultural resources there, the affordable, the housing division talks about, they're the ones who regulate housing, water board regulates water, all those kind of things. So your job is to opine whether or not this complies with the Kona CDP. So and I understand completely that many of those issues are things that the CDP addresses. And so you should be considering all of those things. They're very important. But your job is to focus on the CDP itself. And so should you find, for example, that something about the project does not comply with the Kona CDP, what you would want to think about doing is pointing to that section of the CDP itself and say, hey, here's a place where this project is falling short or is actually, in violation. So you're going to want to make sure that you can articulate where it's connecting and where it's not.
So, but we can draw on that information in terms of how we construct our letter.
Of course, all the information that you're getting, you want to evaluate it, as I think one or two of your testifiers have said, really from all sides, you want to evaluate everything for its accuracy and the weight of its importance. That's why you're here, because you are experts to evaluate these things. And so you're going to evaluate all the information that you get, take all of that in, everything that you've heard. And, so if floodplains are an issue that's in the CDP, then by all means, you want to take into consideration the flood information that you've heard and find where the CDP says, don't build in a floodplain. And then you can say, hey, this project is inconsistent.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. You can address the concerns to the
I do to your counsel. Can you hear me, Ms. Campbell? How can they address nationhood? Because that is being brought to them. And again, this was not voted on by the majority of people, the CDP. So here's the matter. Nationhood is being brought to the table and they are having to field it. That's being brought to them before now. So they have to address that. Is that part that would you concur? Because here's the other thing. A testimony, I would keep you folks here long and into the night and many nights, telling you about what the ancestors would say about each of these matters of land, of water, all of these things. We do not need modern man to be talking about these things. We have a matter at hand that is the advent of and the resuming of the kingdom of Hawaii. That's real. So how would you address that, counsel?
I
want to ask her too, Charles.
I think that's something we're gonna have to decide based on her reference, yeah.
But I'd like to hear what she says.
You're not, yeah, but this is really for the committee's benefit, not for the council, so. Not for council, but I'll leave it up to her if she wants to answer that question, but I think it's something that.
She's a living, breathing person, isn't she?
I understand, but the point of order here today is whether we write that.
But I want to ask her, right, the source, she's the one that is guiding you. What about my point?
Your point is guiding us as well, Mama. I mean, everything you've said, we've listened to, so I think you have to trust that we will. She's providing us legal guidance, right? Yeah, and we're gonna try and incorporate all the things that were said today, including Mr. Masukawa's concerns as well.
Thank you.
And I want the letter, offer my opinion.
And
we should be constructive in our letter, and I don't think we might be writing letters that oppose things because for or favorite things for that matter, not, based on the facts and real concerns. So, there's a lot of motion in this, and I might be displaying a little bit of that now. There's a lot of motion tied up in it, but I think at the end of the day, whatever we send out to the council has to be wrapped around the facts, and has to be wrapped around what, Corporation Council has just advised us on. Otherwise, it goes nowhere, we have.
Oh, it always, it
Well,
will go
I understand
somewhere.
where you're coming from. The committee does operate underneath the planning.
I
As well
understand.
as careful.
I understand, but I think it's highly arrogant when you don't address the people. I think it's not you're showing your best foot forward, Miss Campbell, and anyone else of the legal profession, because this is here now.
Yeah.
And this has happened where the kingdom began, at Kamakohoni, so thank you.
Thank you. So committee members. I don't know if we have enough time today to discuss the meeting. I'm willing to stay on if you like, but staff and everybody else have places to go. I left this one too long. I thought it was something we should finish, and we probably have to defer
One thing,
the rest of the agenda.
one thing we could do is, if we can just decide on bullet points, then we could work on a letter and send it out after the meeting to the members for their people.
Yeah.
Instead of kind of ironing the detail out like now. What are the main points that we want to talk to, and then we can draft the letter in the next few days and send it out.
Yeah, well, I think what council pretty much gave us on balance. It's got to relate to the CDP and the things I do see, a lot of flood issues, ongoing pollution, and the traffic issues.
So I guess the main thing is, do we want to give a negative recommendation? I think that's the key. Do the majority of the committee members want to send the county council a negative recommendation or not?
That's good.
Well, no, we have to make a motion.
I
Yeah.
would like a motion for our Kona AC, Kona CDP AC to send a letter opposing it with the 3 bullet points of concurrency, floodplain, and future resources.
And I'll
Thank
second
you.
that.
And could you make it a special point that this is not just cultural resources? You have heard testimony that you've never heard before.
It's so. No, okay. There's a motion and a second.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's open for discussion. I think the bullet points are appropriate because that's what we is to facilitate the.
Those are in the.
No, it is,
Yeah.
so that's why I think they're appropriate. I'm trying to come up with whether that's an opposition or a recommendation.
Well, what's before the council is measured to recommend against giving them an extension, so that's what we'd be responding to.
Right. There's the extension piece.
Yeah,
Okay, so the letter needs to capture something that says we're against this. That, I think the extension.
which is why we're before the.
Right, and we're not gonna get into the meat of the details of the concern.
Well, I think that's to reflect why, which means it has to be policy issues.
And who will be drafting?
Well, we can work on it, I can help, and we can send it around to the.
Yeah.
What's available to us then in terms of closing this meeting and then having that follow up by July 10th?
And then get Charlie to sign it when we agree on a final draft.
Right, so then it would be to draft and then to have post another meeting to vote on it as is, or do you guys want to just map out more specific? I think we need a little bit more specific bullets to have somebody draft it and chair sign it and send it.
We think we agreed on the bullet points and we'll work on it and send it amongst ourselves, and then when we're happy with it, then.
It sounds like that's not.
Folks, hi, this is Jean, the bad guy. You can't circulate a letter amongst yourselves outside of a meeting. I'm sorry, that all sunshine law that's really, really, really inconvenient when it comes to things like this. That would be a serial communication that we're not allowed to do.
But we could agree right now that our 3 bullet points are in opposition because of concurrency, the floodplain and cultural resources, and we can agree on that. And if you to write the letter.
They could designate Nancy to draft the letter in that way and then give chair authority to sign and submit that letter as testimony to council. Is that an option?
Say it's.
Yes, you could do that, recognizing that most of you will never see the letter before it goes out.
Yeah.
You know, I really like to make things specifically based on language in the Kona CDP, and I feel empowered by doing that, so I'm not gonna go off on any personal.
The other alternative would be to call for a special meeting, once Nancy has drafted it. And then agendize probably only this item for that special meeting, and then take a vote on it collectively after reviewing. Those are the 2 options.
To do that, but I don't think that's a good use of our time.
Well, the main thing is,
I think
I think it's well worth your
Yeah.
time. I can hear, and they're gonna hear. Please. It's well worth your time.
Another related item is that.
To get together to look at the specific letter.
Yes, everything about this is worth it. You know, you have an uprising happening here. This is going to go into the mayoral race. This is going to be known by all the people. There is words from heaven that are discussing the new kingdom.
If I could just continue, Gabby. The other option is on top of this written testimony, is you could even also designate a representative to show up on the county. Just to keep that in mind too, in case you want to keep all efforts. That's on the so I thought it was on the 17th. My understanding is the 3rd Wednesday.
No, it's the 10th.
Is the 10th?
They didn't do the 3rd, because that's why people were, it should have been the 3rd, but they moved it to the 10th because of the 4th of July.
Okay, so then it would be the 10th, so then it would be, but you can provide testimony here.
David needs to sign off.
Also. Or.
Chair, sorry, David also needs to sign off. I'm not too sure how long he'll be on.
Okay, David, we have a motion then, let's just vote on the motion and the three bullet points. Okay, so the motion was to write a letter to council. There's options beyond that in terms of showing up in person, and this doesn't limit us to anything. And the three bullet points would be the concurrency.
Consistent with the Kona CDP regarding concurrency requirements established in the Kona CDP on flood corridor concerns and cultural resource concerns.
Can you put cultural first?
Yeah.
Because it is surely that.
Okay, so you're gonna write the letter, Nancy, and we're gonna just designate her to write it, and that'll go in.
Nancy will be designated to write the letter. The committee understands that they will be reviewing the draft. And then the draft will be sent to Uncle Charlie. Planning will create a cover letter, and help finalize. Finalized draft will go to Uncle Charlie to sign, and planning will submit it to council on behalf of the AC.
Can any of
We need to
us
vote.
show up for the public testimony?
You can always show up as a member of the public. If you're gonna show up to represent the action committee, you need to vote on that today.
I think we should vote on that too.
Is somebody going?
I think I could, I'm not really sure, but if I couldn't, I mean, it'd be better to say I could, and then.
Well, let's focus on this first motion.
Yeah.
Okay, that is a motion, so.
Yeah.
You aware of the motion on the table to draft a letter with 3 bullet points, to cover 3 bullet points on the relation to the CDP. David?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so we have a motion on the table to draft a letter to county council before the next meeting. And cover 3 bullet points related to the CDP. So I'm gonna call for the vote. So all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay. Nay, or hearing none, then the motion It's approved, so Nancy, you'll write that. And then, with regards to,
Testimony I mean, unless something that I don't know about, I would like to do that, so I make a motion and I would take the letter. And read it for testimony on behalf of the Kona CDP. The town.
Do you want to read it on Zoom, because you're here?
But yeah,
Sorry. Do the testimony, because you're chairman.
I'm not sure I can,
well, maybe,
but
But through Zoom.
can we just make a
Okay,
motion
both
that,
names?
yeah,
somebody-
that somebody from the Kona.
Yeah.
but both of us can't go representing. Right?
I mean, I think it was a area.
Yeah, I think so too, I just had the feeling that you might not be able to.
Yeah. Now I'm traveling, but it's a little later. Okay, so you wanna make that motion? That,
Yes, so.
but we just gonna recommend having.
Gene, can they propose to have like an unnamed representative show up to the county council to read aloud the written testimony?
It really should be a designated person, an individual.
Can we designate 2 or 3 people?
You could designate a person and an alternate, perhaps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I make a motion that either that Charlie will read our letter on behalf of the Kona CDPAC on July 10th, and I will be his alternate. For testimony.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And the one last matter, I think Masson said yes to make the first item cultural. That out of all the priorities listed in the bullets, the cultural one is the most important one.
Yeah, we can put that for you.
Thanks, Nancy. You need a vote for that?
No.
No.
Are you sure?
Sure.
You got witnesses here that say,
No problem with that.
thanks, Ms. Bishikio.
So we resolve the agenda item. If there's no more comments, questions, or what additions, I'm gonna close.
You just didn't find one to say something.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. If there are no other comments, I'm just gonna close this agenda item.
I was gonna say, thanks for powering through that.
Oh, I've been on marathon here.
I'm glad you're all the testimonies still come to a conclusion.
If I had my way, you'd be going home at 8 o'clock tonight. Just that's out of experience, you should, but I'm cool now. Okay, so we have a bunch of other agenda items, plus the approval of minutes, because we're probably gonna have to defer to another meeting.
Our next meeting, Sarah?
Next week.
The 16th? The 16th of July is our next meeting.
Okay, I'm trapped.
I think that you're traveling. Oh, that's good.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna be off the state.
In that form check for the 16th, and if we need to pick a new date, we can send out some.
Yeah.
When will you tell?
I'll be back by the following week. I'm leaving on the 13th, coming back on.
We could do it a week later, but our friends can be here,
Yeah. Agreed.
Is that your chairman?
So
Yeah.
planning staff will send a form check for the following week to postpone the 16th to the 23rd, the 23rd.
Yes, and we'll also check for the room.
And then we will, yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Also, any paper materials that were handed to you guys today, we will update the meeting packets, no, please take them with you. We'll update the meeting packets on there, send you the updated link. That will be available
I
online.
think the ones I've got, I'm gonna put it myself.
Maybe copy these and then.
I got.
Gonna- what's he gonna-
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is he gonna adjourn the meeting?
No, that's all you, those are your copies.
No, but
and
she
then
was gonna be
this is
via
also
Zoom
the
that
Excel.
one time too.
All of this will be updated online, or even the people on.
Wait, we need a motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
No, you can just adjourn the meeting, you can just state the time and I now.
Okay, what about deferring the?
That's something, we can,
If you want to, you can make a motion to continue everything else that's on your agenda to your next meeting, whatever the schedule for that is, and then you can just simply adjourn.
I'll motion to defer everything else. to the next meeting.
Second, John, finance and.
wait.
Any discussion? No, all in favor, indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Nay, hearing none, motion carries, and I adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Up, guys.